Not every man really lives.
I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer.
Get busy living. You get busy dying.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
You've likely heard all of those quotes in some form or another at some point in your life. You've heard them misquoted, out of context. Sometimes you may have heard them used at a time when you really needed them or not. Regardless of how this wisdom has come to you, there's nothing that hasn't been said before when it comes to wisdom. Much of it is common sense, but that doesn't make it worthless. In fact, we kind of thrive on it as human beings. We suffer, we hurt, we doubt, we fear. We seek to find a way out of the darkness at every turn in our lives. And frequently that comes in the form of wisdom, be it from a parent, a friend, a coworker, a stranger, or even an Instagram post. No human is born that doesn't struggle, and no two struggles are the same. Born rich, poor, middle class, American, European, Asian, Middle Eastern, it doesn't matter. Whatever the case, we all struggle in some way. Some more than others, but struggle nonetheless. And in those struggles, we fight battles. We fail, we win, we lose, we suffer, and we frequently overcome. We find a way forward, and we learn something from it. Thus, wisdom is born. Now, wisdom isn't born out of thin air. It is earned. And throughout time, since man has walked the earth, wisdom has been a stone rolling down a snowy mountain, turning into a massive boulder of knowledge and experience, and it continues down that mountain to this day. It's reshaped, reused, re-upped, replayed, and ultimately repackaged to fit whatever situation or struggle you endure. The wording, the delivery, and presentation may change, but the messages, when truly broken down, all boil down to the same basic things that we've been telling each other for centuries, all in the hopes of living better and fulfilling lives amidst the struggle of them. Okay, so what the hell? I thought you were a movie guy. You gave us movie reviews and talked about pop culture and shit. Well, yeah, I do. And we'll get there. This is an evolving form, and it all becomes what it becomes. But I have to start where I'm at. I think that art is the greatest reference to who we are as a species, and that's why I gravitate toward it. But I want to get deeper under the hood, and I want to share some of my own repackaged wisdom that I've experienced throughout my life. And I want to create a dialogue with you, my listeners and watchers, and hopefully give you something that will help you in your own struggle. When I think of my college days of going to the movies with friends every Friday night, we would go to a restaurant afterwards and talk about what we just saw. It almost always boiled down to some aspect of the journey of life. Now, sure, we talked about, cool shots and great scenes, brilliant acting, and cinematic mastery or lack thereof. But I found the conversations that got deeper into the story, the characters, the world in which we just voyaged to be the most useful. Frequently, it was always about what someone did or said in a movie, book, comic, or even a video game that left us with something to chew on. If it was all just flashy nonsense and word verbiage, and what does that offer us? So yes, pulp culture, be it movies, books, comics, video games, etc., is something that I will continue to view as a lens to the human experience, which will be a staple of this show, but I don't want to limit myself to just that. I've done that for far too long. The purpose here is not only to share wisdom, but to gain it. Thus, I'll be working to have a different guest with each new episode and asking them to share their own repackaged wisdom with all of us, be it actors, filmmakers, authors, or fitness experts, doctors, firemen, construction workers, whatever. Why limit our view to just the entertainment profession? I want to talk to people from all walks of life, even if I'm partial to the entertainment crowd, given that it's my profession of choice. But it's not the only profession I've ever worked, and probably not the last. So before I get to my first guest, I want to begin with my own repackaged wisdom for this week, which is simply this. Don't wait for the right moment. There is no right moment. This is the second time I've recorded this audio intro. and I've already rewritten it. This is the first time. The first time that I did it was when I just bought this new house that I'm in now, and was preparing for a trip out of state to Olympia, and things got in the way. I didn't get it finished, and I knew I had a lot of prep to do and a lot of things to do before I was going to be ready. But I planned to get back to it. I was going to get it done. I'll get it done. Then I got back from my trip to Olympia, and I got a bad case of COVID. Which I'm still fighting the after effects of as I speak into this microphone now. I need a haircut. I need a better camera. Probably need to set my mic up better because I'm using this old crappy one, but it still gets the job done. And my studio still isn't set up properly or lit properly the way that I want it. But it will get the job done. Now, does all that mean that I should not start this thing? I should wait? Should I wait for all my symptoms, my COVID symptoms? I don't have COVID anymore, so you're not going to catch it. But should I wait till all my symptoms clear up and I'm 100% before I do anything? Should I wait until my studio is perfect and I have like the best camera and the best mic? The answer is fuck no. I don't have to wait, nor do I need to. I've wanted to get this show, this Repackaged Wisdom, started for a long, long time. And there's never going to be a perfect moment. That perfect moment that you're always waiting for, it's never coming. It doesn't exist. It's a myth. There's all manner of challenges that await us. And life doesn't have the courtesy of giving us a sneak preview of what those are. Ultimately, you end up waiting yourself into a longer delay, then another, before poof, a year has gone by with nothing to show. Then another year, and another year. All because you thought you had to wait till everything was just right in order to begin. It's a lie we tell ourselves in order to delay. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's doubt, maybe it's will, maybe it's dedication. It's a roadblock that you put up yourself, and you can take it down just as easily. There's another piece of repackaged wisdom that I love, which is finished, not perfect, which goes along with perfect is the enemy of done. I can't agree with those sentiments more. We often get in our own way because we think we're not ready. We think the timing isn't right. We think we're not good enough. We think we'll fail. We think it's a waste of time. We sell our own dreams down the river way faster than anyone else ever could. Just start. Whatever it is, a comic, a film project, a blog, a YouTube channel, a book, a garden, a fitness regimen, healthy eating, learning the guitar, whatever it is, start. You begin where you stand now, which takes us to one of the best repackaged wisdom quotes of all time. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So start stepping. With that, it's time to welcome the first guest to Repackaged Wisdom, who knows a thing or two about starting and finishing a project.
You are about to enter a world where a young warrior is called upon to free his people.
He who controls the spice controls the universe. I will kill him!
I will love you forever.
Long live the fighters! Do not show the slightest pity or mercy.
Now, Frank Herbert's widely read, talked about, and cherished masterpiece comes to the screen.
Emperor, we come for you!
Dune.
All right, guys, so I am here with Max Evry. Now, Max is an 18-year veteran of the entertainment journalism industry. I've known Max and seen Max throughout my time working for Joe Blow. We were on set visits, junkets, everything. I've always ran into Max. It was always great to see him. He's always just such a friendly face and just a cool guy, and just a really, really, kind of informed, perfect, individual within that industry that was not full of himself. And I always loved running into Max because Max is a genuine guy, and he made working in that industry a lot of fun. And, you run into a lot of people and throughout that industry and or throughout the different places you go, and running into Max always put a smile on my face. So Max, thank you so much for joining us today. Max.
My pleasure, Paul. Yeah. Thank you. Everything you just said, just names changed. Yes.
Back to me.
Yes, right back.
So the reason I have Max on today, besides honestly, I love to talk to people that I enjoy, and part of this, podcast is talking to people that I feel like have something to offer everybody out there, and can give you some perspective and some wisdom. Max just published a book. Now, I realize that this day and age, you can publish a book on Amazon and really not have much scrutiny. That's not the route that Max has gone, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to share before we talk about it. But Max's book, a masterpiece in disarray, David Lynch's Dune, an oral history. This is a massive tome. I'm going to call it a tome. Is that fair, Max, to call it a tome?
Yeah, it's the size of a pet tombstone. You can hurt a person with it. It's 3 pounds, 560 pages.
What struck me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but your book is actually longer than Frank Herbert's Dune, the original book.
Correct.
In terms of page count. That is, I thought that was interesting. I was reading this morning, and I was like, reading the page count of Frank Herbert's Dune, which I didn't know off the top of my head. And I was like, oh, Max just surpassed Frank Herbert's Dune with a masterpiece of disarray.
Yeah. Ask me how many pages it was supposed to be.
How many pages was it supposed to be?
Great question, Paul. It was supposed to be 150 pages. That was what I was contracted for. It was supposed to be 150 pages. It's supposed to be done in 7 months. It's supposed to be just a slim little, thing for, about, as part of a line about cult movies. And and it just like, as I got into it, like my original mandate was, he said, like, if you can get 2 or 3 interviews, that's good. I wound up getting like 60, I think. And
whoa, you went above and beyond.
Yeah, and like he just the publisher was so great because he saw what I was doing, and he just said, like, just keep going, it's fine, we can get it whenever, just and I just kept going, and and then it wound up being a little over 2 years to finish, and then it was another several months to edit it and throw it all together, and so. Yeah, I missed my deadline. Yeah.
I missed my deadline and then extended my book by like 250 pages.
No, and when I was done with it, this is the thing for people out there who want to write a book. A page in Word does not equal a page in a book. So I wrote what I thought was a reasonable sized book because I wrote 400 pages in Word.
Right.
And that came to around 700 pages for the book. And I was so fucking embarrassed. I was like, am I like James Michener now? Jesus Christ. And so I set about just chopping as much as I possibly could because I didn't want people to be like, oh, fuck, 700 pages. I'm not reading that. Which is what I would do. 560 is enough as it is, but like the publisher told me like the spine will literally break if we release it this size. So no, it's been honed now to a tight 560.
Tight 560. Mm-hmm. But you do mention in the book too, you do talk about that, how in your intro, that there isn't a lot of, studies and books and things like that written on David Lynch's Dune. Mm-hmm. So, it's kind of like, it is, a kind of a monstrosity, but there isn't really a lot out there that's already been covered. So you really have kind of broken some new ground here with this book.
Yeah. I got a little egotistical about it too towards the end. Cause towards the end, I'd had like, I think I had somebody from pretty much every department on the film. Ooh. I got David, I got Kyle, I got Sean Young, I got all these people. And then at a certain point I was like, you know what? Let's go scorched earth. Like, let's make this the last book about David Lynch's Dune. Like, let's make it impossible for anybody to write another one.
Yeah. No, but I think that is amazing. They say, shoot for the moon and you hit the stars, but it's like, if you're going into an endeavor like that, why not go all the way?
Yeah.
That's why stop at one spot and be like, oh, well, that's good enough. I mean, I commend you. I think that's the way to go, like, And that also probably gave you a lot more to work with. So when you had to cut, it probably wasn't as difficult. Yeah. Is that true or no?
Oh no, cutting was the easiest part because it was like it was such a moment of clarity because I was like, okay, like, when I set out to write this, I really wanted it to be entertaining. I didn't want it to be academic. I didn't
Right.
want it to be a slog. I didn't want it to feel like homework. Like I really tried to make it fun to
Yeah.
read. And so like anything that reeked of filler or something overly academic or something that you could easily look up online, I just cut that, because it's like, we don't need it. And, and also like something that helped too is my North Star throughout the whole writing process was you are writing a book about David Lynch's Dune. You're not writing a book about David Lynch's filmography. You're not writing a book about the Dune miniseries or Denis Villeneuve's Dune or all the 500 Dune books or, or Jodorowsky's Dune or whatever. Like that's for somebody else to do. Like you're writing a book about David Lynch's Dune. So just focus on that and that'll be enough. And
Yeah.
as you can see, it's more than enough.
Yeah, and it really is. It really is on point. I know you mentioned Villeneuve's, you've mentioned the mini series and stuff like that, but you're not going in depth on those. And I think that because that's a distraction if you start doing that. And I am curious, and I will pick your brain a little bit about Denis Villeneuve's Dune, but in terms of comparison. But I am glad that your book really does hone in on that. Like it really is about David Lynch's Dune. This is not a this is not a facade. This is not a trap. This is in fact about David Lynch's Dune.
Yeah.
So before we get into some of the other topics about the book, I'm curious to know from your perspective, because you're a film guy, just like me, like we were these geeky kids watching these movies. And I'll tell you, like my first experience with David Lynch's Dune was as a kid, just like you, far too young to understand what in the hell I was watching. But I remember, much like Blade Runner for me, Dune was a movie that I was fascinated by, but I was equally frustrated because I was too young to understand it. I was too young to interpret it in terms of like, David Lynch at the age he's making this film, he knows what he's making, at least to a point. He knows what the story is. But as a kid watching it, I'm like, I have no concept of this floating blob in this machine that's talking and like all this crazy shit that's going on. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. But I was desperate to know at that age. And
yeah, a lot of people have that same feeling when they're reading Herbert's book. They're like, oh, I got to page 60 and I had to start again because I like, it's like, and then it clicked at page 60, what was going on, because there's all this nomenclature and, weird customs.
So
and,
dense.
Yeah. It's 10,000 years in the future, yeah. It's and David's movie, very much embraces that. Villeneuve's mission statement seemed to have been to make the most accessible version of Dune, like the most commercial, slick version of Dune. And David's MO seemed to have been to embrace the strangeness, to embrace the foreign feeling of this world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's David Lynch. If you're going to hire David Lynch to do a movie, and I think about, honestly, I think that had Ridley Scott done the film, I think that Ridley Scott would have delivered a perfectly commercial film, just like Denny would have, or has rather. I think Denny's version is very much almost like what you would get with a Ridley Scott version. I feel like that's very consistent.
I think you're 100% on point. And what's fascinating is when I was writing the book, when I was doing a brief section about Ridley Scott's version, and one of the points of contention was that the budget came in, the initial budget came in around $50 million in 1981 or whatever. Yeah. And the studio balked at that. And what's interesting, if you take that number and you adjust it for inflation, it's the same budget as Denis Villeneuve's.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's like, this is what this costs.
So give me the Max Evry experience of finding David Lynch's Dune as a child.
Okay, so like David Lynch's Dune is something that like it wasn't like an instant obsession, like, oh my god, like I'm so in love with this movie. It was like it was kind of like the earwig from Night Gallery, like it crawled in and laid some eggs and eventually they hatched, and
very Lynchian fashion.
Yeah, and I because like my dad was obsessed with the books. I don't know if he saw the movie or if he just dismissed it, but it wasn't a big deal to him. Like he loved the books. He read all 6 and really encouraged me to get into them. And so I picked up the first one, and at the same time I taped the movie off of the Sci-Fi Channel. I later realized I taped the Alan Smithy version, the television cut, which is like 3 or 4 hours long. So it's much slower than the theatrical version. And so I'm sort of watching it, I'm methodically, like watching little bits of it and then reading the book concurrently. So it was like I was reading and watching in parallel.
God, you're such a nerd, just like me. I swear to God, I've done that same shit so many times, dude. I've had a book in my lap that was adapted into a movie, and I'm like, what? I remember my first experience with that was Patriot Games. I read Tom Clancy's Patriot Games, and then I was so excited. I was like, it was the first time I ever did this. So I read the book and then saw the movie, and then I saw the movie, and that was my first picture into how Hollywood bastardizes every single like filmed version of a novel that they do, because it was so vastly different. And I was just like, what happened? But I just kept doing it. And it was Jurassic Park and everything else from there, just endless. But I did, I started Dune and I never finished Dune. I started Frank Herbert's Dune, and full confession, I never finished it. I got about halfway through, and that's usually the point where I think when you get halfway through a book where it's like, and you quit at halfway, I know that's kind of telling in a way. I was just like,
I once stopped reading Michael Crichton's The Lost World with 20 pages to go.
Oh, wow.
That's hate. That's hate.
Like, I am hate reading this book. I'm done. I'm done.
Fuck it. Who cares? And they all lived happily ever after the end.
It's write your own ending.
Yeah. No, but it is a slog. But Herbert's book is a bit of a slog, unfortunately. I'm not a Herbert purist, and I think his ideas are more interesting than his execution, and and I think some of the material is kind of dated. Honestly, you couldn't really do a direct translation of it now. I think you have to, like specifically things like the Baron, like the Baron is very much like a homophobic cliche in the book, and even in the 80s, like Lynch kind of tiptoed around that by making him like a guy that likes to rip heart plugs out of people instead of, and then Villeneuve just made him like just this sexless Colonel Kurtz figure.
Yeah. Right. Like very stripped down, he's not definitely nowhere near the Baron and Lynch's version.
Oh no.
God, like not even close.
I love Kenny McMillan in this movie. He's so good.
He's so maniacally amazing throughout. And he's frightening. I think Stellan Skarsgård does a fine enough job in Villeneuve's film, but definitely not quite the screen presence that you have with Kenny. So talk to me about how did this book come to be? Like, what was the process here? How are you suddenly getting a book deal to write about Dune and this whole thing? How did this begin for you?
Well, I mean, I think, I think you gotta go back to slightly before I signed the deal, which is I had been working for this it's the old story. It's a site that used to be good. It's a movie site that used to be good, and then it just gradually got shittier and shittier place to work until like you had this great sort of group of people there for a long time, and then at a certain point it was just me left hanging on by my pinky
I'm
finger.
Aware.
Yeah, and it was just it was a corrosive place to work because like the mandate was not do good writing. The mandate was just shoot content out of a cannon, and it was just worthless writing. And at a certain point I realized I didn't want my my epitaph to read 3 new character posters from Mordecai or whatever. So yeah, I'm sure you can relate.
I mean, it's amazing how much I can relate.
but no, but it's so basically like that, that place was, very rapidly imploding. I was a managing editor at the time, and they asked me to, like, if I was willing to fire people and use Chat GPT and stuff like that. And I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. And then, like, shortly thereafter, like, things got really rough. And yeah, and then me and another guy got like, sort of really savagely booted. And in the middle of all this, I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing, with my life at this place? It's a place that doesn't give a shit about me,
Yep.
and I'm all I'm doing is, just, helping a bunch of assholes, keep their exploitative empire rolling. And so, I I said, what's the opposite of what I'm doing right now? Like, right now I'm writing worthless 300-word aggregate news pieces or shitty listicles that nobody gives a crap about. So what's the opposite? Oh, whoa, well, let's do a book that's devoted to just one movie, and an
Yes.
old movie at that, and a movie
Yes.
that, people kind of kick to the curb, and, has a shitty reputation. And, let's see if we can, kick the tires on this thing, and, make people see it in a new light. And so, yeah, so I got the opportunity from this great publisher, 1984 Publishing. They came out with Clark Collis's book on Shaun of the Dead, You've Got Red on You. And they've done a bunch of other really great books. And yeah, they, and I picked Dune because, I think at the time there was the build up to the Villeneuve movie, and
Right.
people
Yeah.
were excited about it. And yeah, and it wasn't until I started writing that I realized that, like, oh, like, no, like, this is like, not only is this a much more fascinating movie than people give it credit for, but it's also got a huge built-in audience for it that loves it. The Richard Nixon silent majority of David Lynch Dune fans.
So how did you approach the publisher? Did the publisher approach you? Did you send in a like a sample or something, or how did that come about?
I already knew the publisher sort of vicariously through my job. Like, I'd promoted some of their books on the site I
Sure.
was working at and stuff like that. So they knew of me. And yeah, and then they, like I said, they were going to start a series of books on cult films. And Dune certainly qualifies
Yeah.
for that. And yeah, and so, like, yeah, it's a, I think he knew who I was. He trusted me and was like, yeah, like, I'm sure you'll do something good. And yeah, it was as simple as that. And yeah, and like I said, like, I had about 7 months to write it. And at the time I was like, oh God, how am I going to write 150 pages? Like, that's I'd never written anything like that before.
Well, what's funny about that, I have a story to add to that is,
Mhm, mhm,
so I was at another site
mhm,
after my Joe Blow days, and I was I've been contemplating a book of my own for a while, and I sat down and I looked at the number, like what was my word count per article, and I was looking at that, and I was like, okay, how many articles have I? It's just basic calculator math here. I'm no math scientist or anything. And I calculated out and I was like, okay, this is how many words I've written for this site in under a year.
mhm,
And I looked at the average page count of a novel. And I was like, I basically have written 5 novels
mhm.
of worthless content.
Yep.
And you're talking about, oh, I've never written 150 pages before, but the truth is you have.
Mhm,
You've probably written countless novels already, just
mhm.
in the content, the amount of content that you put out there. But it's just lost in the world wide web. It's just floating out there in the ether. And
Yeah. Yeah,
now
it's
you have,
completely ephemeral. Yeah, it's like
exactly,
that. Yeah, like, nobody gives a shit 20 minutes after it's posted.
exactly. It's in a void that maybe gets recalled when somebody decides to search for something in Google. Uh,
Mhm.
and that depends on how high up your results are. Um, So yeah, I had a similar epiphany in that way, where I was just like, why would I continue to do this? I can just write my own. I'm just gonna write my own stuff, my own things, do my own stuff. What am I doing? Just tired of making other people wealthy by feeding their machine. And
Mm-hmm.
it's worthless. It's thankless too. You're
Mm-hmm.
easily replaced. And there's so many
Very
people
easily.
out there that
Yeah.
will work for nothing to create nothing content. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just not me. And honestly, it's not you. It's not these people that are seasoned, that have been around, that have seen and done and visited and talked and written and all this other stuff. It's just not a place. It's not a place for us anymore. I feel like guys like us, we have a lot more to say than to talk about character posters or to introduce a trailer for the studio that they just dropped.
Right.
All this other shit.
Yeah.
Even
Being
set
an
visits.
unpaid publicist.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even set visits and all that other shit now, that those
Mm-hmm.
experiences are cool for you and me. They're not cool
Mm-hmm.
for the reader.
No.
They're not, because
Well,
because
yeah.
on the day that they drop, there's 20 sites that are dropping it, and it's all the
Mm,
same information.
yeah.
It's just a cool
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
experience for us.
I mean, I always saw those, and I'm saying this as somebody who did something like 50 set visits over their career, and I loved it. I loved going to the sets and
Same.
being wined and dined by the studio and seeing how actual big movies are made and stuff like that. Part it was really fun. That's what made the job worth it. And but I always knew the truth of it is, I saw what those pieces did.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything for us, like those were a means of control. It's like, oh, like they're going to want to get invited to these set visits and these parties and these whatevers, and these junkets. So like, let's invite them, make them feel like big shots. And then, then when we say, oh, take that piece down,
Oh
or,
yeah.
maybe think twice about writing a shitty review of Batman v Superman or something like,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. One of my first experiences at Joe Blow, it was like right when I had taken over as editor in chief. One of the very first things that happened was we took an exclusive clip for some shitty straight to video movie. And I can't remember what studio it was, but it was whatever studio was doing the new Spike Lee's Old Boy.
Mm,
And we had just written a piece about that was like pretty negative, like because
mhm,
Joe Blow was very much an opinion oriented site, which is one of the things that I liked,
mhm,
because you could actually speak your mind in a lot of those pieces. Uh, but we had like kind of trash talked the Old Boy remake. It hadn't even been released yet, but it was getting ready to be, and it was ended up being the same studio and the same rep um, that was hawking this clip for us. And we were getting ready to publish the clip, and then I remember she just got bold. This rarely happens. I mean, it does happen sometimes, but it was like right piggybacked after, like, oh, here's the clip. Also, can we do something about this article? Like right
oh,
after we were sent that clip. And I was like, what? She's like, it's pretty they were like, oh, it's pretty negative. Like, can we like fix this? Like, can we fix this up? And I remember I was
wow.
glad, it was like one of those situations where, I was backed up by my boss at the time, and we're like, no, we're not going to change that.
Hmm.
This is what we do. This is how we do it. It was one of those rare times where it was like we stood up and said, no, we'll run your clip, which we don't really give a shit about anyways.
Hmm.
It was like just some straight to video movie. I was like, well, we're not gonna change that. But as you said, like that is the leverage that they're trying to get with these things, with your set visits and your junkets and all that other stuff.
Hmm.
Because you know as well as I do that those things rarely do the kind of numbers on an article basis that you
Yeah.
you would think, like, oh, we got a set visit. It's gonna be
Hmm.
huge. It's like the lowest performing article of the day.
Sure. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
You
And
get more
and and yeah,
out of your your character posts would probably do.
absolutely. No, sure. And like the truth of it is, like in the last few years, I would say in the last 5 years, they've drastically cut down on a lot of that stuff, like the destination junkets and the set
Yeah.
visits. Like
And
that was already winding.
COVID changed all of that, like from the get-go, and
Yeah, but
it's now
even
kind of,
pre-COVID, I think they were starting to see like they didn't need
yeah.
to do all this. Like that most of these sites are pretty, malleable. and they want access to the junkets, and and now they don't even have to fly us out. They just do the Zooms,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's
I
like
mean, like,
it's nothing for them.
yeah, Zoom changed everything, and honestly, that was one of the biggest reasons why I quit Joe Blow. One, I was burnt out, and I was on the cusp of being asked to do a whole lot more for less money, and I was
Mhm.
like, this ain't worth it, because
Yeah.
really the reason I was sticking around was to do the cool shit,
Mhm.
to go to junkets, to do interviews, to
Yeah.
write about things I cared about, and to be in charge of that. But it was like it was now at the point where it's like I'm going to be on lockdown for God knows how long. I'm not traveling anywhere, and now I'm being asked to do more work on stuff that I don't care about, and I was just like, I need to change, you
Yeah.
know?
And what you just said is crucial, because it's like this is the trick to a lot of these sites, especially the ones that really treat their people bad and don't give them health insurance, and all that stuff is like, like the thing you're there for, the set visits, the swag, the whatever, none of that is being given to you by your job.
Yeah,
Your job isn't giving you any of that.
nothing.
The studios are giving you that. And then when COVID happened, all that stuff went away. And
Gone.
then what are you left with? You're left with a shitty job.
You're left with a shitty job. They want you to churn out shitty articles. They could be written by ChatGPT, and
Hmm.
probably most of them are gonna be at some point, because that's what do you need to say about 4 new character posters that ChatGPT couldn't do for you at this point? And the
Exactly.
irony is that ChatGPT is drawing its AI and its all its information from probably from articles you wrote before about 4 character posters.
Yeah.
So we've already done the work for them. Um, so
Yeah.
it's an interesting topic. I know we're a little off topic on Dune, but you have a unique perspective that I think both of us can share, and I think it's good for for people that are aspiring to work for a movie news site or to work in entertainment journalism or anything. I think they need to go in with their eyes wide open at this point. And I think if you're young and you're out there and you want to start doing that, you want to be a part of that. um, your competition has gotten way, 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 way worse. Because now you're competing with AI, you're competing with outsource, people writing from Pakistan are
Yeah.
writing these articles now.
Yeah. For like
Nothing
five
to say
dollars an
against
article or something.
exactly,
Yeah.
and they will work for a lot less
Hmm.
than what you will. So if you think that you're going to make a living off of writing listicles and character poster things and things like that for whatever news site is out there, you're sorely mistaken. This is not it's not a place where you're going to make a livable wage. It's just not. You can hustle, uh,
Hmm.
you can work your way up into an editor position or something like that, in which you're not really working, you're not really writing anymore, you're just kind of managing people and content. um,
Hmm. Yeah.
and
That's what
and
I did. I worked my way up to managing editor, the highest position you can be in, and I was being paid the same amount of money I was paid as an associate editor 6 years before, and I didn't have health insurance. I was technically a 1099
yeah,
illegally,
yeah.
because I was a 1099. It was in charge of doling out work. It was in charge of a staff. I was in charge of payroll,
Oh
and I
wow.
was a 1099. That's so illegal, and it's ridiculous. And these
Well,
people
and
just
that's
get
another
away
thing
with it.
too. A lot of these sites, man, they are operating under the radar. That's just a
Mhm.
fact. It's just a fact. And you want to I'm not going to sit here and blow whistles on every site out there, but the fact of the matter is, like, it's slave wages. It really
Mhm.
is. And it's content farming, it's all of those things. And
Mhm.
it's really has shifted within the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years is when it's really shifted. You don't find good writing on these sites anymore. You just don't. And I'm not trying to insult anybody that I'm friends with that are working for some of these sites to this day, but you're not getting good writing anymore. You're not getting thoughtful pieces. You know, I didn't really care much for Devin Faraci when he was around, but I will say this, like, Devin was at least writing thoughtful pieces. It's a
Yeah,
shame
I agree.
his whole
Yeah.
journey is a whole other thing, but writing like that, it was thoughtful, right? And I didn't agree. A lot of some of his writing pissed me off, and we definitely didn't see eye to eye. you know
Mhm.
and in my time when I was at Joe Blow, I was able to write a lot of thoughtful pieces that I wanted to write about, and that was great.
Yeah.
But those are rare positions to be in this day and age. It's very fucking rare. Like people just aren't, I don't know if people just aren't hungry for it, or if people are just happy with the junk food that they're getting now, but that's kind of where the industry has gone. So I guess, in talking about this, like I just, I hope that those that are interested in doing this kind of work go into it with their eyes wide open and have a long-term goal. Think about being somewhere else. Like, Max has just published a book. This is amazing. This is something that you can go to Barnes and Noble and pick off a shelf, something you could take home, you can read, something that was researched, interviews were done. Like this is something where something has to be something that is being said, not something that's being repeated, not something that's being aggregated.
Right.
And I just think that people should have bolder ambitions if they're looking to get into this trade, that goes well beyond just pumping out, 5-6 articles a day for a site that will be forgotten. It just will. It'll be forgotten. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
but
true.
A book, on the shelf is a totally different thing. And I think that, aspiring to that is a much better journey for anybody that's looking to get into this. So that's my repackaged wisdom on that. Cause it's been said before and it'll be said again, but I think that's something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So anyways, let's get back to the book here. I know we got a little off topic there, but it's really kind of on topic at the same time because, Max publishing this book, I think is a complete win for the people in our trade. And that's how I see it. And I'm, I told you online publicly, but I'm so proud to see that, to see like people that I love to see and work with and just be around. I love seeing them succeed. And I think it's a win for our craft. So, proud of you, Max.
Same to you too. I really like all the comic stuff you're doing right now. I think it's really good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're almost there. I'm to the end of book 1 of my comic series, which I'm doing in 3 parts. It's going to be 3 books. And I'm right at the end of book 1, which has been a journey to say the least. So, but it's great. It's great to be at that end point where it's like, okay, we're about ready to do something here, but it's a process. I mean, you worked 2 years on this book. You know that very well is that it takes time. It takes time to get this stuff done, but it's worth it in the long run, I think.
Yeah. I'm also a visual artist. That's also a background of mine. So I mean, I know what it's like to just spend all your time, doing this kind of writing stuff, and then you have the art thing kind of die on the vine.
Yeah.
So it's always good to get back into the swing of that, get back on the drawing board, literally.
And I still have my my stash hoodie, by the way, which I cherish.
Oh, thank you.
It's Max made this hoodie of Henry Cavill's Superman from I guess it's more of the Justice League in terms of like when he had the mustache and it was the horrible editing and everything.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Like,
Yeah.
But it's like a BBS image, but with the mustache. It's an epic. Every time I wear that thing, people are like, oh my God, that thing is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. There was, I remember I specifically used the mustache and stubble that he had in Mission Impossible because is what he would have looked like on the Justice League side.
Oh my God, he would have looked better than the whatever edit job they did. God, that was so terrible.
Yeah, still looked better than he did in The Flash.
Oh God. Oh man, The Flash. Oh
yeah.
I enjoyed The Flash in many parts, but like there's so many things that you just can't get beyond that are just kind of bafflingly terrible.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that angered me is like obviously the thing I'm looking forward to the most because I'm the age that I am, and I remember going to see Batman '89 and that being my whole world, that movie, and then they do this thing now when they do a legacy sequel, is they retcon a character so that they haven't really grown or developed at all in the intervening 30 years or whatever. So they're still the same exact fucking thing that you remember from your childhood. So you won't pee yourself when you go to the theater and they've grown or, have a new philosophy on life or maybe a new outfit or a new hat or anything. They're just the same thing you remember. You know, and yeah, and Michael Keaton is really good in The Flash. All he does is play the hits. He says all the lines you remember from the
It's
movies you like, and then
yep,
he does exposition dialogue that any character could have done.
yep, yep. I think
So
the moment that I felt was like kind of cool that they needed to really expand upon was the moment where he's like sewing up his arm and he kind of smiles because he's like
yeah,
back at it. I was like, okay, that's a cool little character moment, but that's about it, you know.
yeah.
That's all you get in terms of a character moment where it's just, you know, like, hey, he's happy to be back as Batman, and he shaved and got a haircut. Cool.
I wish we could cut Ezra Miller out of this movie and just see more of him.
I
But
mean, in retrospect, now it's like, shit. Why didn't they? You just should have made a new Batman movie with Michael Keaton. You know, he was obviously game to do it. So, but what are you gonna do?
woulda, shoulda, coulda.
I mean, the current thing in disarray, ECU. I mean, hopefully
Yeah,
Ken and Saffron can do something with that and find a way forward. But whew,
yeah.
it
I mean,
is.
this relates back to Dune because, you know, like you and I have been watching, you know, the sort of blockbuster movie, you know, or just mainstream movies in general turn into just homogenous product that has all the edges sanded off, and you know, it's like so to go back and look at a movie like David Lynch's Dune, um, even in its, you know, compromised, heavily edited, you know, heavily, you know, sort of, you know, over supervised, you know, Lynch on a leash, whatever you want to call it. Um, there's so much of him in it, and there's so much of his weirdness, and there's so much,
Yeah.
you know, just wild shit, you know, like Sting with a cat rat milking antidote box. It's like, who thought that was worth keeping? You know, they cut an hour out of the movie, but they kept that. So
You can't get rid of the cat. There's gonna be milk.
Thufir needs his antidote so that you can see him for 8 seconds in the end.
Well, you know,
Um,
that's something that always baffles me, continues to baffle me about Lynch is that he's like, you know, all but disowned this film. I
mhm,
don't understand why he doesn't embrace it, you know? Like there's so much love, there's so much like appreciation, you know, with this
mhm.
kind of cult following. I feel like that's redemption for him. And
Yeah.
I'm he seems to be just so adamant about, no, fuck this movie. It was I hate it. I disown it, blah 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 blah. I feel like he should embrace it though. I feel like it's just something that he should, but I can't speak for David Lynch's mind, you know. As an artist, I get it. You know, sometimes you know, you hate the things you create, you know, even if other people love them. So,
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I mean, he told me that, you know, he felt very responsible. You know, he felt like he let a lot of people down, like a lot of people were, you know, hoping that this was going to be a huge movie and all this stuff. And, you know, and I understand it on that level. And then I think that, you know, he was at that point where, like, you know, Elephant Man had been a big success, you know, Eraserhead had been, you know, a success for like a cult midnight movie. And, you know, like the sky was sort of the limit for him. And I think, you know, he had ambitions to do, you know, bigger, weirder stuff. And, you know, I know he wanted to make a movie called Ronnie Rocket, which has, you know, its own kind of, you know, fantasy world to it. And yeah, and I think this was for him probably like a stepping stone to that,
right.
like that, like it was gonna be like one for them, one for me kind
Yeah.
of thing. And I think, you know, the fact that it was so poorly received and it was such a bad experience for him kind of soured him on
Yeah.
those grander, you know, ideas that he had. You know, I think he sort of said, okay, well, I'm gonna stay in my lane. I'm gonna be the neo noir guy, the Blue Velvet guy, the Twin Peaks guy, you know, like, and that'll be what I do. And I won't try this kind of, you know, big scale world building again, even though he's great at it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one thing I will say, each and every single time I watch his Dune, especially in HD, uh, the sets are fucking amazing. The sets on, I don't care what anybody says, the sets are fucking epic. And they don't build sets like that anymore. They don't. I know that Denny does his thing with Dune, but it does not touch the production design, the sets and everything in David Lynch's Dune. That alone, I think, is an achievement. It's gorgeous. Every time I watch it, I'm like, God, that set had to be awesome to be walking around on,
Yeah.
That had to
Yeah. And that's what everybody says in the book, that like that they just love like walking around, and they were just in awe
be. Yeah.
of, and these were all built by Mexican artisans, who were working without power tools, which is crazy. Those were all done by hand. Yeah, and a lot of them were built as like as like not as sets that you can like, wild out a wall or whatever. Like they were just that's it. That's the room. There it is. And they had to work around that. And yeah, and I think if you look at, all respect to Denis Villeneuve, but I personally found the look of his film, Part One, to be very samey. It was like every set was kind of this brutalist, like kind of plain, thing, like shot in a big wide Ansel Adams shot. And I got a little bored with it, honestly. And the great thing about Lynch's movie is like every single they really worked hard to make each world distinct.
Yeah.
Like the Caladan, everything's made out of wood because it's got oceans and trees and all this stuff. And then and then on Dune, everything's made out of sandstone.
Right.
And then on Gidi Prime, everything is like kind of industrialized and oily and plastic. And I think that idea of like really creating a visual shorthand for the audience is not to be underestimated or underrated.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point in terms of like those distinctions. So you said like over 60 people for this.
Yeah, about 36 from the movie itself.
I'm curious, what was the interview to you that really like kind of like stood out amongst all the people that you talked to?
Besides David.
I guess David's kind of the obvious answer, but I guess outside of David, because David's that's the get right there,
that's the Wizard of Oz.
For sure.
Yeah. Bob Ringwood, the costume designer, was an amazing get because he does not do a lot of interviews. He's retired. But he's still bright as hell and very feisty, and he was willing to spill the tea. He didn't really give a fuck, as you can read in the book. And what I really like about it though is that he wasn't in a mean-spirited way at all. Like he was actually very complimentary about everybody he worked with. It's just he's like, things got fucked up on this movie. And that's obvious, that's apparent by watching it. But like like I think and he still harbors a lot of anger about that. But what's great is he's got a mind like a steel trap, and he remembers things so vividly, and he has such great stories. And I think he's a super underrated costume designer. He never won an Oscar or anything, but like, we talk in the book about how the still suit from Dune is in almost certainly a progenitor of the modern day superhero costume. Because I think that was the first time you really saw that like combination of like a suit sculpted with muscles. Yeah, it's also black leather and all that. It's like all the hallmarks of the modern day superhero. And then Ringwood went and did Batman, and the Batman costume and the still suit costume. The Batman just looks like the next step. Yeah. From that, and then uncredited 10 years after that, he goes and designs the costumes for X-Men. Yeah. The first X-Men.
Bring up X-Men. Yeah. It's like, so the same suits in many ways, Yeah.
So it's like, so the movie is a lot more influential than you think, even though it was a bomb, and even though it was, all these things, and then Lynch kind of disowns it. it has had a lot of influence downstream, the same way that Blade Runner did. The difference between Blade Runner and Dune is, David wanted to take another shot. He wanted to take a mulligan on the movie and re-edit it and do a longer cut, and Universal didn't want to pay him.
Yeah.
And so, so he didn't do it. They did their own butchered version, which he took his name off of.
Yeah.
And, and then if you look at the success that Blade Runner has had with the director's cut and then with the final cut, the amount of money that they, that they could have made off of, that was left off the table for this.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my God. Like a true director's cut of Dune today, could have made it a landmark movie.
Dude, that would be so amazing if he was, I mean, Zack Snyder getting a cut of Justice League is like unheard of. But now that that's happened, I feel like, dude, why can't you guys let David Lynch go back and re-edit this? Honestly, I want all the director's cuts. And I'll say this, I don't think every director's cut is better.
No.
I've seen multiple ones like where I'm like, I actually like the theatrical cut better. But there are some where you're like, dude, this is the definitive version. Like, this is it. Like, I just watched Ridley Scott's Roadshow version of Kingdom of Heaven again.
Yeah.
Which I love. I love it. There are certain movies where I think you gotta let them run with it. And then there's certain movies where it's like, dude, y'all need an editor. Y'all need a producer. Y'all need something, which, it's kind of like every Netflix original movie that comes out.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, like the weirdly, like the person who has done it so right, so wrong, and so is like James Cameron. Because I think like the Aliens director's cut, I won't watch another cut. Like the director's cut of Aliens is the best cut of Aliens.
I just watched that weeks ago. Just watched that.
It's fucking unbelievable. I don't know why you'd watch the theatrical cut. Yeah. The director's cut of Terminator 2, who gives a fuck? Terminator 2 is fine. Like, leave it alone.
It's true. It's just a couple shots. It's not even that much, It's not be like, this really changes things.
No, not at all. And then The Abyss, the director's cut, everything that was great about that movie is better, and everything that was bad is worse. So it's like, it's always a mixed bag, but it's like, the good thing is, like, we can let directors do it. There's no harm in it, because like the theatrical cut will always be there. They're not going to throw it away. But yeah, I mean, I think a proper Lynch cut of Dune could, it could still happen. He's still with us. I don't know if it would take that much money anymore. Maybe like 10 million, 10, 15 million. It wouldn't be like Justice League numbers. It wouldn't be like $80 million to finish this.
No, I mean, it's too late to go back really and do reshoots. I mean, I think if you did anything, you'd maybe clean up a few VFX if you wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, you could potentially.
It's just an editor's game, right?
Yeah, it's an editor's game, and it's like it's about making sure the footage. It's about making sure the footage still exists, because there was a big fire at Universal in 2008. So, and I asked Rafaela De Laurentiis if she knew if the footage survived or not, and she didn't tell me. She said she was going to find out, but she never got back.
I'm gonna have to look into that for you. We didn't think anybody would ever ask about that.
Yeah.
This Max Evry guy writing a book. Shit, we're fucked.
No, but it's possible it wasn't at Universal, because the movie was technically an independent production with De Laurentiis that Universal was financing a lot of. But yeah, so I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if David's willing to do it. I don't know if anybody's willing to put up the money. But if that perfect trifecta of things could happen, I think it would mean the world to a lot of people, especially to the David Lynch fans who have kind of, dismissed the movie,
I'd love to see it. I mean, I would absolutely love to see it. I don't know if there'd be rights issues in order to do it, but I would love to see it. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like it does kind of, it irritates me almost how much the critical community has dismissed Dune over the years, because I know that David Lynch is an important director to the critical community, and like even like David Foster Wallace wrote a piece for Premiere about David Lynch in the 90s, and he just kind of writes Dune off as like, oh, this was just a stepping stone so he could do Blue Velvet. And I'm like, well, that's worthless. Like, as brilliant as you might be, David Foster Wallace, that's a pretty worthless opinion. Like, I think, you have to look deeper into, into the theme and into the way the movie is different from the book. All the things that Lynch changed, he changed for a reason. He changed to make it more his movie and his story.
Yeah, and as everybody says, I think it is. I don't think it's unadaptable. I agree with Ridley Scott. And I guess, Denny has proven that too. It's not unadaptable, but I think it does, it's something that there's some creative ambiguity there with, even Herbert, who, he kind of just created this stuff in this wild space in his brain. And it does open things up for interpretation quite a bit, like, you never actually see them space travel. You never see them, doing any of that. It's always kind of just this, it just happens. It happens in the ether. But I feel like having a visual stylist to do something with it makes it all the better. And I think Lynch, I think he proved that with his work. I think it's a testament to him just being himself in the face of this massive blockbuster, platform that he was basically, thrust into with this film. I think it's amazing the film even exists. It's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think especially after if people read the book, like, I think you'll notice a lot more of the lynchiness of it.
Sure.
You'll notice a lot more of how really wild and unconventional, and how many big swings the movie takes. Just like the idea of doing the interior monologues of all the characters was a really bold stroke for the time. Like, there's a guy who runs a comic book store here in Brooklyn called Anyone Comics, and I was talking to him about Dune, and he's like, "Oh, Dune! Like, that's the most comic book movie ever made," because it's like
it's true.
It's like that's the thought balloons,
little thought balloons. Yeah. Thing. That's funny as shit. That's true. It is true. It's so rare that, and that is a big swing. You and I both know that. Like for any movie, anytime you use voiceover, especially if you ask Robert McKee, of course, God help you if you use voiceover. But voiceover, I find a lot of times movies with voiceover, they work for me. I'm into voiceover, and maybe that's just because I'm a comic nerd. But it's like, I don't have a problem with voiceover. It's very rare, and I can't think of a movie off the top of my head where I felt that it really didn't work. I'm sure there's some out there, but I think most of the time I get into it because I think it does take you deeper into the character's head. And I even though Harrison Ford hates it, I like his voiceover in Blade Runner. Maybe it's just because that's the version that I grew up with. You know? But I don't have a problem with that. I like it, and I like it in Dune too. I think it's what sets it apart.
Yeah. Do you know who I think is the unsung king of the voiceover is Nicolas Cage. He does amazing voiceovers, like Raising Arizona is one. Another one's Bringing Out the Dead, the movie made by Scorsese. Fantastic voiceover. And then The Family Man has a really great voiceover to it. I think he's great.
Just saw a guy at FanX dressed as H.I. McDonough at in full costume, and I was like, wow. That is a deep cut for this crowd, like, because it's so many, it's just like it's a younger crowd that have no clue who this guy is. And I was like, oh, he's holding the Pampers, and he's got the clapboard thing, for for his mugshot. It's so good. I was like, oh my god, this guy went all out on a Coen Brothers movie that most people have not seen if they're younger than us.
That's true. Yeah. Are you a fan of that movie?
I love Raising Arizona. I was watching that movie as a kid, when it came out, and I had no concept of who the Coen Brothers were or anything like that.
Like, the scene where he's talking in the factory that he works with Emmett Walsh, they have on their uniforms, and that their uniforms say Hudsucker Industries.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's a good deep cut. I didn't know that. Awesome.
But that's neither here nor there.
I love it. Raising Arizona is a great movie. So I like most Coen Brothers.
Yeah. So what movie would you write a book about?
So it's funny. I've thought about it. I would like to write a biography on Tony Scott. I think that's something that I would really like to do. I'm a
Yeah.
huge Tony Scott fan. Tony Scott is the filmmaker that got me into this. You and I wouldn't be talking probably if it wasn't for Tony Scott. Because as a kid, I used to love this movie that would come on late at night on HBO called Revenge with Kevin
Oh
Costner.
yeah.
And I just love the look of it. There was something about it that I couldn't put my finger on. And I was like, and this is funny because I just watched Last Boy Scout last night. But I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, it just looks different. Visually, this is not like every other movie out there. And I couldn't figure out why, but the kind of the smoky shots, the tight close-ups, the
24-hour sunsets.
Exactly. And exactly. Magic hour movies. And this was before the internet. So I had no concept of figuring, out any of this. And then like a couple days after, I remember one of the times I watched it, Top Gun was on TV. And it was the first time I'm watching the movie and I'm seeing the shots and I'm like, this looks familiar. It's like this revelatory moment where I'm noticing style. You know how you and I could probably look at a lot of comics and be like, that is Todd McFarlane, that's Jim Lee, that's whatever. We could just see it. You know it right off the bat. And that was the first time that I made the connection. And then I remember I went to the bookstore and bought the video movie guides that cross-reference. That was the only thing you could do. That was the IMDb of the day.
Yeah.
First thing I looked up was Revenge. I was like, okay, directed by Tony Scott. And then you could go in the back and you could look up and see what other movies he directed. And I'm like, holy shit, Crimson Tide, True Romance, all these movies that I just loved. And I was like, this guy's amazing. And that was it. Like, that was the catalyst for me that had me looking up, all these different directors. I'm like, holy shit, I'm a Robert Zemeckis fan. I'm a Spielberg fan. I'm like, these guys, I had no idea that it's like basically their signature on all these films. And that's what got me into all of this. But
it's great when you're when you're just subconsciously drawn to films from the same director as a kid or whatever before you're aware of
it's amazing.
Of who's making them. Yeah. Like for me when I was a kid, it was like Joe Dante movies and stuff like that. Or
Dante's another one. Like just
Yeah. But no, Tony Scott would be an amazing person to write a book because like he had a whole art background. He had and then if you look at his first movie, The Hunger, you see a totally different kind of filmmaker that he could have become if that movie had been successful.
Kind of gothic style horror filmmaker or something.
Art kind of very arty.
Very arty.
I think he's way underrated, Tony, and I think in some ways surpasses his brother. I think
on the action front by far he surpasses Ridley. Ridley's definitely got, he's got there's so much to Ridley. He's so layered. I love both of those guys.
Sure.
But yeah, Tony, I just think he's, he's fascinating. He's gone now. And I think that his style, especially once he was partnered with Simpson and Bruckheimer, it changed everything, it changed the look and style, and everybody was just aping him, up to Michael Bay. I remember when Bad Boys came out and I was like, is this Tony Scott? And I was like, oh, it's Michael Bay. It's this new guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, up until then, so commercials had always cost more money than movies per second.
Right.
Like they're always like, just like if you made a commercial, if you made a movie for what a commercial cost, it would cost $500 million. And like, so like, but like, like filmmakers like him and Ridley and Alan Parker and Michael Mann and, all these guys, Hugh Hudson, like that, there were all these commercial directors who went into mainstream features in the 80s and really just changed the dynamic because they said, oh, we're going to use the same like techniques like editing and photography and and psychological manipulation and we're gonna apply it to feature filmmaking and that was a big sea change that obviously we're still feeling like that's the norm now. But back then it was extraordinary.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of movies that that I would love to tackle, and I find that much more compelling to focus, just as you've done with your book, is to focus on one film and to kind of peel back the layers. I think a movie that affected me tremendously as a teenager was The Crow, and I would love to write a deep dive book about that too, and kind of and really go into the negative aspects of it, like the things that led to Brandon Lee's death on set, and
Mhm.
kind of the legacy that that film has carried forward, and you know why they've never been able to make a film better than that one. You know, I think that there's a lot of
Mhm.
tragedy um and interest in that,
Mhm.
which is much like Dune has become a cult. Like, it was a decent hit in theaters, but I think it's certainly grown into a cult status as well, that's been far beyond anything that you could have ever imagined. You know, and I think
Yeah.
it's interesting to wonder what would that have been had Brandon Lee not died. You know, would we have
Right.
good sequels afterwards because he was signed for sequels? Would it have like gone to shit? You know, would Brandon Lee be doing, you know, straight to video B movies now? Like, who knows? Like, who knows? You know, I think there's just a lot of
Yeah,
a lot of
especially
like,
considering that, you know, that was a Weinstein movie, you know, it's like,
yeah,
I think that, you know, like, certainly, like, as was the case with, the Twilight Zone movie, you know, I think when the tragedy happened on the Twilight Zone movie, I believe the status of the project at the studio became, well, let's let them finish, and we'll release it, and then we'll be done with it.
yeah.
And so, like, you know, like Joe Dante and George Miller doing their sequences, they're like, everybody left us alone. Like nobody gave us notes. They just gave us a lot of money, and like we built these great sets, and yeah. And so, like, something similar might have happened with The Crow, where I think like the tragedy may have made it more a more amenable situation with the Weinsteins. Just, okay, just let the director
Do
make the
that.
movie, and we're not going to fuck with him too much. But like, maybe if Brandon Lee didn't die, like maybe the Weinsteins would have been like, oh, fuck, you know, he needs a kid sidekick, or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh
Like, who
God.
knows?
Who knows? But I mean, you know as well as I do, it's like they're always trying to up the ante for the sequels and do something, and it's like
Yeah.
start throwing everything at the wall that will stick. So I don't know. I think it'd be a fascinating exploration, and I don't know that anybody's written anything that kind of dives into that. That at least not that I've read, and you know, I'm a
Yeah.
pretty big fan of that genre. But um,
Those would both be amazing books, and I think
yeah,
you could do a kick-ass job
I
doing them.
absolutely,
Yeah. I would say for anybody out there who wants to write a book about a specific movie or a specific filmmaker. I mean, obviously you can't do this with Tony Scott, but if the filmmaker is still alive, I think you really have to try to get them.
yeah,
You have
absolutely.
to try to get them. Like, you kind of don't have a book until you
Because
do.
otherwise, it's like
And
unauthorized, like pap. You know, it's like it's nothing
yeah,
because
yeah,
if you can't get their voice, if you can't get, you know, their perspective, then
hmm,
it really doesn't hold much weight. You know, so
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's like, I mean, so for a year, I didn't know if I had a book because I didn't get David until like a year plus into the
how
process.
difficult was it for you to get David in that sense? Like, was it just a lot of like contacting reps and agents and things like that, or how long did it?
Oh, so some of the people in this book were cold contacts, and they would just say yes.
Right.
Some of them I never got. Some people had never responded. You know, it's like, but in terms of people I got, sometimes it would be one outreach. Sometimes it'd be two, three. In some cases, I had to come at people from 5 or 6 different ways. You know, oh,
Yeah.
this rep, or I know this person that knows their rep, or, you know, whatever. Like, it's a lot of detective work.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, and some people were like, "Yeah, I'll do it," and then I didn't hear from them for 2 years. Some people took 2 full years to finally get
Oh
on the
shit.
record, but for David, it was one email.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, and
That's a
I was very happy about that, and I'm very happy with that he took the time, you know, to kind of, you know, to talk to me and to talk about a subject that he doesn't particularly like talking about.
yeah.
Um,
No,
and
that's a great get. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
and I mean that my whole, like, you know the deal better than anybody. It's like, you're in this business, you're trained. When you interview people, you're like, okay, well, gotta get this scoop. We gotta get this scoop. We gotta
ask
find out about this,
questions
this,
that
this.
must be asked. Yep.
Yeah. And my whole thing when I was interviewing him was, fuck all that. Like, I have him, like, for this much time. All I want to do is make him happier about the movie.
Nice.
Like everybody else asks the same questions. Everybody, gets the same answers. I just want to make him happier about the movie. And I hope that comes through in the conversation that we had. And I mean, like, and, he clearly came there with an agenda, and he clearly came there, he's very upfront about the fact that he doesn't like talking about the movie. And yeah, and I just hope that I hope the interview made him realize that there's a lot of other people who really love it, and that he didn't necessarily let everybody down. Yeah. And then I hope also that he does eventually get to at least glance at the book and maybe for a couple minutes and be like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe, maybe it's not so bad. And then, of course, the dream would be for him to go back and finish the movie.
That would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Truly amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, Max, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me on this new podcast venture.
As a crash test dummy.
Fortunately, I don't think any limbs were broken on this particular episode, so that's great.
My ankle.
I do want to pimp your book one more time, so I'm going to show
Yes.
it here for everybody to see, and I'm also going to put some links everywhere this goes up, so that people can quickly find it. This is a great presentation. I love this. I love the red. What do you call this? What is it called?
The red gilding.
Gilding. There we go.
Yeah.
I think that is like so distinct and badass.
Yeah.
So
no, it's really cool. It actually delayed the book. Because because we printed the book and then we sent it to some foreign country to get the red gilding, and then a typhoon came and kept the book in a harbor for 10 days.
This thing is like premium quality. This is the presentation is great. You've got a great little photo section. I love the action figures because I'm an action figure nerd. But yeah, this is, and the other thing that we had talked about earlier, and I can't remember if we were recording already, but this is a book you can jump in at any point. You don't really need to know much about Dune. You don't have to be some kind of expert or anything. It really is just, if you're interested in film, if you're interested in filmmaking, if you're interested in the process, this is a great book. I think this is a book that should be sitting on the shelves of anybody that's, looking to get into our craft, or just, casual, fans of filmmaking. This is, I think, will join the ranks with, a lot of those other books out there. So you need it for your collection. But
thank you, man. Yeah.
Not just to really gather dust. This is something, again, that you can, there's invaluable information in here. And if anybody, we talked a little bit of shop about writing about stuff. These are the kinds of books that you need to read in order to be up on your shit. And the truth is, there's a lot of people out there writing that don't know shit. And that's just the fact, they're kind of just news aggregates, and that's what it is. But if you really want to be an informed writer, and you want to write about this stuff, or you want to know about this stuff, these are the kind of books you need to read.
And introduce yourself to new films all the time.
Always.
Always. And be informed, be, know the context of things. It's not just movie, movies were being made before 1995.
What?
Yeah. And please, if you're listening and you're thinking about getting a masterpiece in Disarray, just know, just because it's 560 pages long does not mean you have to, as Paul said, read cover to cover. Like, I actually actively encourage people in the intro to the book to jump around different sections, read what you're interested in. I have sections about music, about effects, about, every single aspect of the film you could think of. I talked to Bill Sienkiewicz, who did the comic book adaptation. It's like, it's whatever aspect of the movie that you're interested in is in the book, and whatever you're not interested in, just just
Just
go
jump
to
around.
the next section, and
Yeah,
don't
I
be.
mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go
Please
ahead.
finish. You were on a roll, and I just stepped right on your
It's
toes.
okay. It's okay.
Look at that. Well, I was just going to say that, for me, I knew I wasn't going to be able to read this whole book before I talked to Max, because I just got it like 5 days ago. And but it was great because I was able to like go through and read a bunch of it and kind of really get an absorption of what it is before we talked. And even just the little bit that I've read from jumping around has been so insightful. So yeah, get the book, make sure you have the movie, preferably in 4K. And I guarantee you're going to have an itching to watch it. Even
Yes.
flipping through, you're going to be ready. You're going to be like, shit, I got to watch this movie again. God damn it. So Max, before I let you go, one thing that I kind of want to start doing here with this podcast is for my guests to share some kind of repackaged wisdom that you may have, something that you may have heard or been told, or something that you've kind of lived by that's taken you throughout your life. It could be something big, something small, something simple, but any kind of advice or wisdom that you kind of carry with you throughout your life. If you feel like sharing it, we'd love to hear it.
Well, so one that immediately leaps to mind, which I used throughout the writing process of this book, was something that my friend Heather Buckley said. I don't know if you know Heather. She's she's still a part of the film community. She does a lot with horror stuff. She's produced a few horror movies like The Ranger and yeah, and she does a lot of supplementary features for Blu-rays and things like that. She's really great. And so she was one of the first people I talked to when I was getting ready to write the book. And one of the things she said was, if you don't get a no, then it's not a no. So, like you can keep trying.
Right.
And you'll be smart about it. Don't be you got to be a stalker, but a nice stalker.
Nice stalker.
It's what she
brings
told
chocolates.
me. Yeah, you got to kind of be you have to be persistent, but obviously, be professional. And yeah, and just yeah, if you don't hear back from somebody, that's not a no. And that turned out to be absolutely true. I mean, yeah, Kyle McLaughlin was 3 tries. And like I said, there's one person in the book who I'm not going to name them, but they said yes. But it was like a Hollywood yes. It was like a yes, and then I never heard back from them for years, and then I finally got them. So it's So I'm saying I think this applies to any kind of endeavor that you're embarking on. It's like if you don't get a no, it's not a no, and yeah, and I mean yeah, and I mean there are some things that you can kind of take a hint.
Sure.
I mean, don't don't send 20 messages to somebody,
On the same day.
Yeah. don't
Space
John
them out.
Yeah, don't John Favreau from Swingers somebody. But yeah, just just keep at it, be persistent, and yeah, and maybe you'll have something.
I think that is amazing advice. I think that is that's great. That's awesome. That's awesome repackaged wisdom right there. So
thank you, Heather.
Max, thank you so much. I hope to have you back again.
Yes, and thank you, Paul, too.
Absolutely. I messaged Max once and got a yes for the podcast. So
yes.
That's great. But yeah, I'm so happy. I'm happy for your success. I'm happy for seeing this book out there. I'm so glad it's out in the wild. I'm proud to own it. I'm proud to read it, and proud to pimp it. And I really do. I hope people get it, because I really do believe in stuff like this. I think it's just great. It's great to see again someone in our trade that is breaking out. And I think that this is really where things have to start to go. If you want to get good film criticism, good film writing, this is the avenue that it can go, which is ironic that the internet opened up so that we could have more and more writing. And now we're going back to books because that's the only place you're going to get anything that isn't content farm bullshit. So
there you go, guys. That's that's the truth, Ruth.
So Max, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you, and we will have you back some other time. In the meantime, where can people find you? Is there any particular platform that you want people to come and stalk you?
Sure. You can come stalk me. I'm at the social media site formerly known as Prince. I think you know the one I'm talking about. The one that kind of looks like a swastika now. It's just my name, Max Evry. And if you are less interested in the me of it all than the Dune of it all, then you should go to Instagram, where I'm Max Evry 1. And that Instagram account is entirely devoted to the book and David Lynch's Dune. And there's lots of great goodies there. There's like quotes and, all the different places the book is appearing, where you can find excerpts, where you can find all sorts of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that I post there that's not even in the book that's really interesting. So check out the Instagram account. And then you can also find me. I'm on a lot of I've done a lot of audio commentaries for companies like Kino Lorber and Arrow Video, so support physical media. Listen to some of my audio commentaries to get more of that deep dive wisdom. I have one coming out in November from Arrow. It's Michael Mann's Black Hat. They do a commentary on that. Yep.
I need some explanations for what the hell happened with that movie.
I tried.
Thanks so much, Max. I appreciate it, man. You're the best.
You too, man. Later.
Once again, you can pick up Max's book online or in stores now, and I highly recommend that you do. It is a great stocking stuffer. Just a great gift in general to give anybody, especially those loved ones, friends, family that are into movies. It is an immersive, massive book that belongs on every movie lover shelf. My sincere thanks for listening to the show. It's nothing if nobody sees it, right? So, and my special thanks to Max for coming on and being our first guest and taking that first bullet. It's an amazing conversation with someone that I have spent a lot of time with over the years, just running into him from place to place to place, and just always just a great face to see. And I hope that you enjoyed our conversation and you got something out of it. So I will do my very best to stay consistent and hope that it brings you not only some entertainment, but some insight that you can carry with you and repackage in your own way in your own life or share with others as it's needed. If anything, you probably have a hankering to watch David Lynch's Dune right now. So that's something too. Join me next time for more Repackaged Wisdom. And make sure to share with me who you'd like to hear from in future episodes, be it specific individual or an individual from some walk of life that you think would be interesting. I love suggestions and ideas to help make this fun and engaging. So hit me up in the comments below, wherever you listen, whether this is on a podcast or on YouTube. I'll be checking and responding. So I do appreciate those comments and look forward to hearing from you guys. So until then, I will leave you with some Teddy Roosevelt wisdom, repackaged wisdom. Do what you can with all you have, wherever you are. I'm Paul Shirey with Repackaged Wisdom, and I will see you guys next time.